The year is 1933. The air in Bangalore is thick with the scent of rain-washed eucalyptus and the low hum of a nation stirring against colonial rule. At the heart of this city stands the Indian Institute of Science, or IISC, a formidable citadel of stone and ambition. Its archways and colonnades were designed to project an image of imperial permanence, a place where the grand project of Western science would be bestowed upon the East. But for Kamala Sohonie, a brilliant 22-year-old who had just topped Bombay University's chemistry department, it was simply the next logical step. Armed with a master's degree and a fierce, quiet determination inherited from her chemist father, she submitted her application for a research fellowship. Her qualifications were not just good, they were exceptional. Her letters of recommendation spoke of a mind that was both methodical and startlingly original. In any merit-based system, her acceptance should have been a formality. Instead, what she received was a wall of silence, followed by a rejection so swift and categorical it felt less like a professional assessment and more like a personal edict. The signature at the bottom of the letter belonged to the Institute's director, a man whose name was synonymous with Indian science itself, Sir C.V. Raman, a Nobel laureate, a national icon, and, as Kamala was about to discover, a gatekeeper of a rigid patriarchal order. The official reason was vague, citing a lack of positions, but the unofficial word that filtered back to her was brutal and specific. Raman had declared, with the unshakable authority of a man who believed his own prestige was a law of nature, that he would not be admitting women into his research programs. His reasoning, reported by colleagues, was a chilling indictment of the era's mindset. Women, he claimed, were simply not competent enough to pursue research. Their presence would be a distraction to the serious male scholars. The laboratory, a space of pure reason and discovery, was no place for them. C.V. Raman's outright sexism was not a private prejudice. It was an institutional policy, enforced by a man whose every word was treated as gospel. For most, this would have been the end. A rejection from a Nobel laureate was a career death sentence. But Kamala Sohonie was not most people. The injustice of it burned hotter than any Bunsen flame. It was an assault not just on her ambition, but on her very identity as a scientist. She packed a small bag, boarded a train to Bangalore, and walked through the imposing gates of the IISC uninvited. She sought out Raman in his office, a space filled with the scent of old paper and the weight of academic authority. This was not a plea, it was a confrontation. A form of a non-violent, unwavering insistence on truth. She did not raise her voice. She did not weep. She simply stood before the giant of Indian physics and asked him to justify his prejudice to her face. She laid out her academic record, her passion, her certainty that she could contribute. She challenged the very foundation of his argument, not with emotion, but with the cold, hard logic he supposedly revered. The confrontation was unprecedented. A young woman with no institutional power challenging the decree of a man celebrated across the British Empire. Raman, taken aback by her tenacity and unable to refute the evidence of her intellect, was cornered. He could not maintain his blanket prohibition without revealing it as pure, unscientific bias. So he offered a compromise, one steeped in condescension. He would admit her, but on a series of humiliating conditions. She would be on probation for the first year, her status contingent on his personal approval of her work. She was forbidden from being a distraction, which meant she was to work late hours after the male researchers had left. Her work would be subject to a level of scrutiny her peers would never face. It was an offer designed to make her quit. He was granting her entry, but ensuring the system was rigged against her. She accepted every single condition. Probationary admission was a victory, but a bitter one. As she walked out of his office and into the sprawling male-dominated campus, the weight of the challenge settled upon her. She had breached the fortress wall, but now she was alone inside, surrounded by those who believed she did not belong. The question wasn't just whether she could produce good work under such pressure. It was far bigger than that. Could one woman's brilliance under constant hostile surveillance force a titan of science to admit he was wrong and, in doing so, pry open the door for generations to come? Following that initial, deeply prejudiced battle, Kamala Sohonie's year on probation at the Indian Institute of Science became a silent, powerful act of rebellion. She didn't just meet Raman's punishing expectations, she systematically dismantled them with the sheer force of her intellect and work ethic. While her male colleagues worked in a collaborative, supportive environment, she toiled in isolation, often late into the night. Her research focused on the biochemistry of legumes and milk proteins, foundational work that was not only impeccable but also directly relevant to India's nutritional challenges. Every experiment was precise, every conclusion rigorously documented. Raman, the skeptical gatekeeper, found himself with nothing to criticize. In fact, he was so profoundly impressed that at the end of the year, he not only granted her a full, unconditional research position, but also took the unprecedented step of formally opening the doors of the IISc to women students. Her solitary defiance had single-handedly broken a systemic barrier. This victory culminated in a prestigious scholarship to one of the world's most revered scientific institutions, Cambridge University. In 1936, she arrived in a world that was both intellectually exhilarating and culturally alien. The Dunn Nutritional Laboratory at Cambridge was the global epicenter of a revolution in biochemistry. It was here that the very concept of vitamins was being forged. Her supervisor was the Nobel laureate Sir Frederick G. Hopkins, a man whose pioneering work on vitamins had reshaped the understanding of human health. Unlike Raman, Hopkins saw not her gender, but the quality of her mind. He assigned her a project at the very frontier of cellular biology, investigating the role of the enzyme cytochrome C. In the simplest terms, if our cells are tiny engines, cytochrome C is a critical spark plug, a universal component in the process of cellular respiration, the very way living things convert food into energy. At the time, its presence was well documented in animal tissues, but its role in the plant kingdom was a mystery. Sohonie's task was to prove its existence and function across a vast range of plant species. Her laboratory became her world. She worked with a relentless focus, her days a cycle of grinding potato tubers, isolating tissues, and using spectrophotometry to detect the telltale signature of the enzyme. The work was painstaking. It required a delicate touch and a deep theoretical understanding of enzyme kinetics. She successfully isolated cytochrome C from plant tissues for the first time, a monumental discovery. Her research demonstrated that this fundamental mechanism of life, this spark of energy, was a shared heritage across both the plant and animal kingdoms. It was a profound contribution to the field of comparative biochemistry. And she did it all with astonishing speed. While a typical Cambridge Ph.D. took the better part of 4 or 5 years, Kamala Sohonie wrote, submitted, and defended her entire doctoral thesis in a staggering 14 months. Her Cambridge Ph.D. was more than a degree. It was an irrefutable testament to the genius that C.V. Raman had initially sought to deny. Armed with a doctorate from Cambridge and a groundbreaking discovery to her name, she returned to India in 1939, a nation on the brink of war and independence. She was now one of the most qualified biochemists in the country, eager to establish her own laboratory and tackle the pressing health crises facing her people. But the systemic barriers she had fought in Bangalore had not vanished, they had merely changed their form. The old boys network of Indian academia, despite her credentials, remained deeply resistant. She applied for professorships and senior research positions only to be met with polite dismissals or offers of junior roles subordinate to less qualified men. The institutional gatekeepers, whose names have vanished from the ledgers of history, saw a woman with a Cambridge Ph.D. not as an asset but as a threat to the established hierarchy. whose signatures appeared on the rejection letters that cited a lack of senior vacancies while simultaneously hiring her male peers. The fight was no longer against a single powerful figure like Raman, but against a faceless, pervasive system of professional jealousy and ingrained sexism. Her persistence, however, was indomitable. After a frustrating stint at Lady Hardinge's Medical College in New Delhi, she finally found a home at the Nutrition Research Laboratory in Coonoor, where she was appointed assistant director. It wasn't the prestigious university post she had earned, but it gave her something she craved even more, a laboratory of her own. For the first time, she had the freedom to set her own research agenda. The question was no longer about proving her worth to others. It was about how she would wield this hard-won scientific freedom to serve a nation in desperate need. From that hard-won laboratory in Coonoor, a sanctuary of science built on a foundation of sheer persistence, emerged a breakthrough that would ripple out from the lab bench and into the lives of millions. Having proven her prowess in the esoteric world of fundamental biochemistry with cytochrome C, Kamala Sohonie now turned her formidable intellect toward a problem that was immediate, tangible, and devastating: the crisis of malnutrition sweeping through the newly independent India. The statistics of the era, buried in dry government reports, told a story of immense human suffering, of children with stunted growth, of pregnant women suffering from debilitating vitamin deficiencies, of a population whose potential was being sapped by a lack of basic nutrition. Sohonie saw this not as an intractable social issue, but as a biochemical problem that demanded a scientific solution. Her research led her to a humble, widely available resource, Neera, the sweet, unfermented sap harvested from the blossoms of palm trees. In rural communities, Neera was known as a refreshing and nutritious drink, a gift of nature. It was rich in carbohydrates, essential minerals, and, crucially, vitamin C. But it had a fatal flaw. The moment it was tapped from the tree, wild yeasts present in the air would begin to ferment the sugars, converting the wholesome nectar into alcoholic toddy within a matter of hours. This process not only made it unsuitable for children and pregnant women, but also destroyed its delicate vitamin content. Neera's potential as a scalable nutritional supplement was locked behind a simple, rapid chemical reaction. This is the problem Sohonie set out to solve. She approached the challenge with the same methodical rigor she had applied to her Cambridge Ph.D. Her lab filled with samples of the palm nectar. She began a series of meticulous experiments to find a way to inhibit the fermentation process without destroying the nutrients. She tested various methods of gentle pasteurization, discovering the precise temperature and duration that would kill the fermenting yeasts while preserving the heat-sensitive vitamin C, or ascorbic acid. She developed what was essentially a cold stabilization technique, a simple, low-cost method that could be easily taught and implemented in villages. She created a stable, transportable, and, most importantly, nutritionally intact version of Neera. This Neera breakthrough was a masterstroke of applied science. It transformed a perishable local drink into a viable public health intervention. Recognizing the immense potential, the first president of India, Dr. Rajendra Prasad, personally encouraged her work. With government support, Sohonie launched extensive field studies to scientifically validate Neera's impact. Her teams traveled to impoverished communities, distributing the stabilized Neera to groups of malnourished adolescent children and pregnant women. The results, published in detailed scientific papers, were astounding. The subjects showed marked improvements in health, significant weight gain, increased hemoglobin levels, and a dramatic reduction in the symptoms of vitamin deficiencies. Her data was incontestable. This wasn't just a village remedy, it was a scientifically proven nutritional powerhouse. Her work became the foundation for government-backed initiatives to promote Neera as a dietary supplement. Small-scale production units were set up, creating employment and providing an affordable source of vital nutrients to the most vulnerable populations. Her science was no longer confined to the pages of academic journals. It was actively nourishing a generation. Kamala Sohonie's research didn't just advance biochemistry, it directly fed a nation. Yet, the name Kamala Sohonie is not etched into the public consciousness alongside the other nation builders of her time. Her story, a powerful saga of confronting bias, achieving global excellence, and dedicating that excellence to public service, was allowed to fade. The grand narratives of history often favor the architects of dams and the fathers of revolutions, while the quiet, meticulous work of a woman who saved thousands from the slow violence of malnutrition is relegated to a footnote. Her erasure from our collective memory is a profound injustice, not just to her, but to the very idea of what a scientific hero can be. We are left with a stark reminder that a breakthrough, no matter how life-changing, is not enough. The systems that record history must be challenged with the same ferocity as the systems that block progress. Resurrecting her story is more than an act of remembrance. It is a necessary correction to the historical record, ensuring that a scientist who fed a nation is, at last, given her rightful place at the table.